What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today we're going to be unboxing the brand new Order of the Spellcaster Structure Deck. Now, this is cool for a few reasons. First off, this is a semi-competitively meta-viable strategy that still has to be fully fleshed out, but has a lot of potential. But in addition to that, if you're a budget player, you're going to be able to get some awesome reprints from this deck, including Pot of Desires and Droll and Lockbird. So there's a lot of really good value in here. So I wanted to go ahead and just show you guys what's in the deck and pretty much just go over the brand new cards so you can decide whether or not you want to buy these cards for yourself. But I do want to mention as well, if you want to see this deck showcased for the very first time, I will be at the Pro Play Games Tour event this weekend, April 20th and 21st in Fort Worth, Texas. There's probably going to be some really good players piloting this deck, and it's going to really show off what the deck can do. So if you can't make it, you can always check out the Twitch stream, but if you can, I really hope to see you guys there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. I think what's kind of neat is that they tried to like revitalize spell counters, because spell counters are one of the oldest mechanics in Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, this dates back all the way to like Magician's Force. I mean, I don't even know if it predates that, but like I know cards like Breaker the Magical Warrior and things like that. These were the cards that originated the spellcaster mechanic, and frankly, it's cool to see that they've kind of taken a new take on it, but have also made them really viable in a way, just because of the fact that the spell counters are able to just produce themselves in mass, realistically. Like, you're able to just get so many spell counters for such little effort now, where back in the day, it was just so much more difficult to do that, which is why the entire archetype really didn't take off. I mean, yeah, Breaker was good, but you had stuff like Royal Magical Library only being used in like FTK decks, so didn't really do a whole lot. But we're gonna kick things off with Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic. So this is the deck's boss monster. It's a level 7, a pendulum scale of 8, 2800 attack, and this card has a lot of text, so let's go ahead and go over it. So the pendulum effect reads, you can remove 6 spell counters from the field, special summon this card from the pendulum zone, then count the number of cards you control that can have a spell counter. Destroy up to that many cards on the field, and if you do, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of cards destroyed. You can only use this effect once per turn. So if you have 6 spell counters and he's in the pendulum zone, you can just summon him out and you can nuke like 2, 3, 4, like just so many cards. This is kind of just like your game ender. This is your win condition, essentially. If you can establish one or even multiple of these, if you resolve that pendulum effect, you're probably winning. Now, what about the monster effect? Well, it gets even better, because once per turn, when a spell or trap card or effect is activated, as a quick effect, you can return 1 card you control with a spell counter to the hand, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy it. Now, then you can place a spell counter with, then you can place the same number of spell counters on this card that the returned card had. So if you return a card that had 2 spell counters, he gets 2 spell counters itself. Now, the reason why that's important is because the next part of this effect. While this card has a spell counter, your opponent cannot target it with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So it has targeting and destruction protection, which means you have to use non-targeting, non-destructive removal, which is not exactly the most common means, and not a lot of decks have access to that. And when this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add 1 normal spell card from your deck to your hand. Any normal spell. So that is just completely insane. This card, again, like I said, is so much text, but all the effects on this card are actually just absurd. So definitely a very good boss monster for the revamp of the archetype. Next, we have Reflection of Endymion, level 7, 1850 attack, 2700 defense, scale 2. Now, a lot of the effects of the new cards are kind of similar, but they just have like basic text, but then they just do different things depending on the card. So all of them have the pendulum effect of each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card when that spell resolves. You're going to see that a lot. Now, you can remove 3 spell counters from this card, special summon both this card from your pendulum zone and 1 monster from your hand that you can place a spell counter on, and place 1 spell counter on each. You're going to see later that the other Endymion cards have a similar effect that you pay 3 spell counters for, and they do something else instead of special summoning itself and from the hand, essentially. Now, Its monster effect, you can only special summon it once per turn, so that's supposed to go in tandem with the pendulum effect if you use it to special summon itself out as well as something else from the hand. If this card is special summoned, you can target one card your opponent controls and one card you control with a spell counter, except this card, return that opponent's card to the hand, then place the same number of spell counters on this card that your returned card had. When this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add one Endymion card from your deck to your hand. So the last part of the effect, I mean, it's very rare that stuff's gonna be killed in battle in 2019, but it is nice that it does technically replace itself, but it's kind of just good being able to empty out monsters out of your hand that you don't want to summon through other means. Now, Spell Power Mastery. Now, this is a spell card that's brand new. Add one Endymion card, from your deck to your hand. Then you can count the number of Spell Power Mastery and Spell Power Grasp you control or have in the graveyard and place that many spell counters among cards you control that you can place a spell counter on, and you can only activate it once per turn. So basically, when you use the first one, you get to basically search for any Endymion card, but then place one spell counter on a card. Then if you activate a second one, since you have one in the graveyard, you can place two. Then if you use a third one, three, and then if you have Spell Power Grasp, it kind of just keeps adding up just exponentially. So just amazing, just searcher card that also supports the archetype. Now we have Dwimmered Path, normal spell card. Target one spellcaster effect monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and you can only use it once per turn. So the thing is, because this is a pendulum oriented deck, this card is like good. I mean, it's a 1-for-1 in terms of card advantage, but it's not like too often that pendulum monsters are going to be sent to the graveyard. So it's kind of like contradictory in that sense, but for any of your other spellcasters, effect monsters specifically, this is a really good way that you can help recur them. It has no other restriction other than the fact that it's once per turn, so I think it's a really neat card. And then we have Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior, obviously paying homage to Breaker, the Magical Warrior. So it's a link to 1600 attack requiring 2 spellcasters. If it's link summoned, place one spell counter on it and it gains 300 attack for each spell counter. You can activate each of the following effects once per turn. First effect reads, if a spellcaster monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, place one spell counter on this card. So again, it has no restrictions on how many spell counters it can have, so that's pretty good. It can keep just bolstering its attack. Then the second effect, you can remove 2 spell counters from this card, then target one card on the field, destroy it. So nice piece of removal. The arrows are really good. Obviously Electromite's a better card, but this isn't a bad alternative, and even though each effect is once per turn, it's still pretty decent. It's removal at the very least. Now we're getting into the other cards. I can't believe this card wasn't a super rare, but Magister of Endymion, level 3, scale 8, 1500 attack, 900 defense. So again, it gets a spell counter every time a spell resolves, and you can remove 3 spell counters from it to special summon both this card from the Pendulum Zone and a face-up monster from your extra deck. So the other card was from the hand, and Magister of Endymion is from the extra deck, so do keep that in mind. Then its other effect is you can only special summon it once per turn. However, when this card declares an attack, you can place one spell counter on it. And the better effect, once per opponent's turn, quick effect, you can remove 3 spell counters from the field, so not just him. Special summon one monster from your deck that you can place a spell counter on. And then if this card is in monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your pendulum zone, then place the same number of spell counters on it that it had as a monster. So basically, if it had 3 spell counters when it's destroyed, it goes to your pendulum zone and it retains those 3 counters. But more importantly, the fact that you can special summon during your opponent's turn and get something like a mythical beast like Jackal King, which can negate effects. You can even get, you know, your boss monster. You can get another copy of Endymion. There's no restriction on what monster that you can get other than the fact that it has to be a monster that you can put a spell counter on. So that's just insane. This card is so good. Next, we have Servant of Endymion, level 3, scale 2, 900 attack, 1500 defense. So again, it can retain spell counters, and then you can remove 3 spell counters, special summon it from the Pendulum Zone, and one monster from your deck. So this is a card that can tutor monsters from your deck. So again, you can get your main boss monster, Endymion, straight out of your deck with this card's Pendulum effect, and you place one spell counter both on Servant as well as whatever you summoned out. Then your other effect is, again, you can only special summon her once per turn. This card with a spell counter can attack directly, and once per opponent's turn, quick effect, discard one card, place one spell counter on each card you control that you can place a spell counter on. And if this card in the monster zone is destroyed, you can place it in the Pendulum Zone, and it retains those counters. So again, Servant and Magister, just incredibly powerful cards. Now we're getting to the rest of the cards. That's pretty much all the new ones, but Endymion, the old Endymion, is in here as well. We have a Crusader of Endymion, Defender the Magical Knight, Mythical Beast Cerberus, Mythical Beast Medusa, Magical something, Magical Exemplar, something, yeah, some players are thinking if this has any potential with this deck, which it could, potentially. Magical Abductor, I think, has a lot of potential with this deck. This card has just always been crazy, especially back in, like, the Draco PAL format. Disenchanter. We got an Apprentice Magician, shout out to the good old GOAT format days there. Dark Magician of Chaos, Fairy Tale Luna. We got a Summoner Monk, Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. Some people are experimenting with a spellbook version of this since they are spellcasters. Magical Undertaker. Magician of Faith, going really old school there. There's the Droll and Lockbird common. If anything, if you still don't have your copies of Droll, just definitely get these decks for this, because you're going to get your value just out of the Droll as well as the other cards. It's just so worth it. So Droll getting common is amazing. Endymion's Lab. So this card's name becomes Magical City of Endymion while it is in the spell and trap zone. Each time a spell counter is activated, place one spell counter on this card when that spell resolves. Once per turn, after damage calculation, if a spellcaster monster is destroyed by battle, you can remove 6 spell counters from the field, special summon one level 7 or higher spellcaster monster from your hand or deck. I feel so it's kind of like Shien's Dojo in like a really weird way, but I feel like it's too conditional. Magical City of Endymion, this is like the heart and soul of the deck, allowing you to accumulate field spells. It can retain spell counters of its own. It can also be used to pay the cost for other spell counter focused cards, so that's just an incredible staple for this deck. Spell Power Grasp, 2 copies of that specifically. We have an Arcane Barrier, Spellbook of Secrets, Spellbook of Power, Spellbook of Wisdom for protection, Magical Blast, Magical Dimension. I've always thought Magical Dimension was just a really cool spellcaster specific support card. 1 copy of Terraforming. Left Arm Offering is another sick reprint in here as well. Again, it's kind of like awkward, but I think it's just awesome that this card got reprinted in general. Pot of Desires common. That is just incredible. Again, you should definitely just pick up the deck solely for your copies of Desires. No better time. Mythical Bestiamorph, that's a really sick name. Each time an opponent's monster's effect is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card when that effect resolves. You can send this card with 6 or more spell counters to the graveyard, add 1 spell from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Again, not bad, but I think it's too conditional just because of the fact it needs 6 spell counters. Granted, you could pay that with like other cards, I suppose, but I don't know. I just feel like there's better cards. Pitch Black Power Stone, remember when that card got hyped? Extra Buck, Gaga Shield, Magician's Circle, and our Duel Links promo card. So, guys, that's gonna go ahead and wrap up this opening. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the order of the Spellcaster Structure Deck and what you think about these new Endymion cards. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon, becoming a YouTube channel member. Because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.